Welcome to the Transitional Changes Mission podcast show with your host, King Summers.
And your host, Queen Summers. And before we begin tonight, we'd like to thank everybody for listening to our show. Thank you so much. We've heard everybody's letters and messages, also well wishes, spirit. And before we begin throughout our show, we'll be informing the format is based in part of the opinions of King and Queen Summers and in no part meant to impose on the belief systems of other individuals. You have a right to your opinions, even if it doesn't coincide with ours. And we welcome you to be a part of the conversation by writing to us at tcmissionspeaks@gmail.com.
So we are about to dive into a hot topic, vaccine. That's what Transitional Changes Mission podcast show is doing, current events, and our mission to end family homelessness. But the current event that is surrounding everybody right now is the vaccine.
That's right. That's right. And in Steven Spielberg's 2002 sci-fi film Minority Report, a special police agency called Pre-Crime nabs suspects before they ever commit an offense. No trial is necessary because the crime is seen as an infallible prediction of the future and thus a matter of fact. The movie challenges viewers to consider the tension between technological determinism and free will, between the rights of an individual and the health of a community. It's a useful metaphor for the argument against coercive vaccination.
We are going to explain our opinions about the vaccine. We're going to drop some history on you about pandemics, things that have caused many harmful, saddened feelings towards people throughout the history of pandemics. We largely appreciate you taking the time out to listen to our opinions and our voice.
Right, thank you. And some people argue that mandatory mass vaccination is an act of communal self-defense and thus completely compatible with the principles underpinning a free society. Unless people are forcibly immunized, they will endanger the life and health of innocent bystanders, goes the argument. But such a position requires a level of precognition we haven't yet attained. Not everyone who is vaccinated against a microbe develops immunity to that microbe. Conversely, some unvaccinated people never become infected. Some people have inborn natural immunity against certain viruses and other microorganisms. Central Africans born with the sickle cell trait provide a classic example of such inborn immunity. Their sickle-shaped red blood cells are inhospitable to the mosquito-borne parasite that causes malaria. Other people are just lucky and never get exposed to a contagious microbe. Just like not every pregnant woman who drinks alcohol or smokes tobacco passes on a malady or disability to her newborn baby. Not every pregnant woman infected with a virus or other microbe passes on the infection to her fetus, nor are all such babies born with birth defects.
And like what Queen Summers is explaining, I'm going to elaborate a little bit more into what I feel like will come to a full circle. I will always promote what I am about to explain throughout this episode to lead to, hopefully, and praying that people be influenced to tackle it or try to attain this. One thing that we have been promoting throughout this podcast show, if you notice, is positivity.
That's right.
Now, with positivity, that is going to lead up to my ending scenario of what is about this vaccine. But before I get into that, I want to bring the audience into this with a couple of questions and a couple of celebrations. We are in a new year. Again.
Yay! Happy New Year. We still celebrating.
If people could remember the ending of 2019 and coming into 2020, that's what I'm about to reflect on, to just remind people of the feeling of feeling good and things starting to change. Within the month of January, a lot of things happened. We lost a great soldier, King Kobe Bryant anniversary coming up.
Rest in peace, Kobe.
Things started to change within the atmosphere of this pandemic that has consumed the globe. So I said all that to ask questions to some people to help them remind the feelings and emotions that was going on at that time. At the same time, I'm going to go into the history of what I have learned quickly about the history of vaccines and pandemics.
Also, prayers go out to Dr. Dre. He is in intensive care. He had a brain aneurysm, and he is in Transitional Changes Mission prayers tonight.
Yes, and that goes for everybody that's in ICUs, enter into the hospital, ambulance, anything that is a dramatic change to the family system that you have been risen with, knowledge of knowing.
Our hearts are out there with you.
Yes, my
with
people.
Love and care.
So with Transitional Changes Mission, we are here to help you go over the hump. Yes, dramatic change has came, but change is good. Not in the sorrow or the grieving of a loved one being gone, but you are still having a great purpose, and Transitional Changes Mission has a purpose with you. With that, I'm going to ask you some questions leading up to where we are in the current event of the vaccine.
And you can write to us at tcmissionspeaks@gmail.com and let us know what you think.
So my first question is, how do you feel about the vaccine? How do you feel about it? Before I get into my answer of it, I'm going to give you some history from what I have did a quick learning on. I'm not a historian type of person or a pandemic study or a scientist, but what I have came up with the history of it, it shows similar, which is a lot of promotion been going on about it, but maybe people haven't been paying attention. And I'm saying this to influence you, to help me, help yourself, help your family, and tell everybody about the history. Because the past is the knowledge to the future. You have to have the knowledge of the past to get to the present day and the future. Past of this pandemic is not brand new to the globe.
Right. And I feel like my personal opinion about the vaccine is not for anybody else, because we've all had knowledge of the vaccines now for a couple months. And December is when they first began rolling out the vaccines. So everybody know if they're going to get it or they're not going to get it. That's a personal decision. In that personal decision, the only thing I have to say with open arms and an open mind and an open heart is I'm not judgmental on the decisions that another person makes. You have to do what's best for yourself on an individual level, whether you're anti-vax or vax.
But what I'm going to say towards that question is the history, what I have read about the Spanish flu is very comparing to COVID-19. And I influence again people to read up on the Spanish flu.
Do your research.
It came out in 1918, the summer of 1918. During that time, Theodore Roosevelt was the president of the United States. Also at that time, pay attention to this because this is going to lead up to my second half to the answer to this. There was a war going on. Anybody in school? I'm asking the 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds or parents that can relate this question to your children that's in school, because I was taught of it, but I don't remember the king that was assassinated, but I think when I touch up on it, I remember it was a king that was assassinated, and it started a World War I. The first World War I.
And this was 1819?
Yes, ma'am, and yes, Queen Summers, and that's the modern war history. So with that, the modern war, World War I, has started. Theodore Roosevelt was the president, and at that time, what I read up on, Spain was playing neutral in this war. So with them playing neutral, and this is going to lead up to where experts is not putting 100% on it, but that is the reason why it was called Spanish flu, because they saying that, well, some research that Spanish flu came from Spain.
Just like this one came from China.
Okay. Yes, Queen Summers. And they also came up with other research saying it came from China. Mm-hmm. It came from Russia. Mm-hmm. And that's just the knowledge of saying
it came from somewhere.
Yeah, it came from somewhere.
Basically.
Mm-hmm. And when it came up during the war, it spread it out through the soldiers. Now, I can't say 100%, but from what I read, I think that's the reason why Theodore Roosevelt pulled the troops out. Because the first wave was inside the war. Okay. Across Europe. It wasn't no knowledge of the Spanish flu being in America at that time. When it started doing what history says, Spanish flu, many deaths inside the war, and it started attacking the youth and seniors. Sounds familiar. So with them and other countries pulling out soldiers, with the soldiers coming back infected, starting to do what we call community spread. That started the pandemic across the globe.
All right, now before we continue, I just want to let y'all know King Summers is not a historian. He has not done years and years of research. This is basically something that he read to be influenced to do my own research, and which was very shocking. So I just want to let you all know to do your own personal research. In no part is this meant to impose on the belief systems of individuals. You have a right to your opinions, even if it doesn't coincide with ours. And we welcome you to be a part of the conversation by writing us at tcmissionspeak@gmail.com. A free society demands adherence to the non-aggressive principle. No person should initiate force against another and should only use force in retaliation or self-defense. Forcibly injecting substances, attenuated microbes, or otherwise into someone else's body cannot be justified as an act of self-defense because there is no way to determine with certainty that the person will ever be responsible for disease transmission. Most states coax but don't coerce vaccination of children in the public school system. 2 of the 50 states, Mississippi and West Virginia, are indeed coercive, but the remaining 48 allow parents to opt out for religious reasons, and 19 allow for some kind of philosophical objection. Some states require parents to read about the risks of opting out before exempting their children. Some require them to acknowledge in writing that in the event of a major school outbreak of a contagious disease for which their child has not received immunization, he or she will be held out of school until the outbreak clears. Private schools requiring vaccination of children as a precondition for admission is not coercive, since private education is a voluntary transaction. But even with the government school monopoly in existence today, immunization policy in at least 19 states is compatible with the non-aggression principle. But free societies are sometimes messy. To live in a free society, a person must be willing to tolerate people who make bad decisions and bad choices, as long as they don't directly infringe on the rights of others. A strong argument can be made that it is self-defense to quarantine people who are infected with a disease-producing organism and are objectively threatening the contamination of others. But in such a case, the use of force against the disease carrier is based upon evidence that the carrier is contagious and may infect others. Any mass immunization program that uses compulsion rather than persuasion will, on balance, do more harm to the well-being of a free people than any good it was intended to convey.
Wow. So there it is. Here we go again. Now I'm going to say something that I really need you to pay attention to, and if you disagree or have more knowledge than me, we welcome you to write to TC Mission.
Or me. If you have more knowledge than me, write to us.
Yes.
Follow us on our website, www.transitionalchangesmission.wordpress.com. You can always learn something new every day.
And knowledge is